Hello, guys. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the GHASWA Outreach Show. And tonight, as usual, we've got very, very interesting topics to discuss today. I've got my guests who are lined up right now and who are going to help us with today's discussion. Indeed, today is an interesting topic, indeed. We're hoping that our third guest will be able to get on very soon. Tonight, we're looking at a pertinent topic. Tonight, we are looking at a subject that has, become quite serious following this lockdown. So tonight, we're going to be looking at the subject of domestic abuse and how it affects our communities, how it affects us as individuals. So I'm hoping that you're going to pause a second and invite your friends, invite your loved ones to come and join us because we can't have this conversation without them. So please make it a point to invite everybody to come on, to come and to be part of this discussion. Please send it to anybody that you think that would benefit from this topic also. Because tonight's topic is so important. Thank you very much, Laura, for joining. I've seen that Laura, one of the executives of the Ghanaian Social Workers Association, is already tuned in and already watching. So thank you very much for tuning in. Across the general field, we are live on Facebook and also live on the YouTube. Already, I've seen that there are about 6 people who are already watching us. So please, if you are on, leave us a comment. Say something to us. Let us know that you can hear us. Let us know that everything is working. And please be involved in this discussion because today's discussion is a powerful one indeed. Without much ado, I'll be hoping that I'll be bringing on our guests to come and introduce themselves. And as I said, please make it a point to share with other people as well. So before I introduce the guests, I want to look at this subject from a different angle. We're actually hoping that we're going to get a male representative today so that we have the views of men being represented in this discussion. Unfortunately, because of how tight people are and how busy people are, we're not able to. But I'm hoping that our men are going to join the discussion as we talk about this subject. Because we look at the fact that we look at the fact that in terms of our socialization, the way we bring up our boys, are we contributing to them growing up to be violent? If we look at the fact that we in their infancy years, in their infancy, when they are playing with toys, we give them guns, they get into physical squabbles. Are we socializing our young boys to become men who are aggressive? Because our daughters, we give them dolls, we give them toys, and they are nurturing. Is that contributing to the status quo? Is that why? What is it? What makes a man? Is it when you are able to walk away, or is it when you stand your ground? We are going to be finding out all this. And, so we've got our guests who are here. And I also see that Imani has been able to join us. Okay, so we're going to go around and introduce our guests. And I'm going to start off with Dr. Cynthia Opokri. Did I mention your name right?
Yes, indeed you did. Thank you.
Okay, so please, let's get into the discussion. Tell our viewers about yourself, introduce yourself briefly, and tell people what you do.
I'm a senior lecturer at Anglia Ruskin University. I teach on the MA Social Work course as well as the BA, and I'm also the course leader on the MA. All
right. Okay. So, in terms of this topic, how relevant and how important is it to you?
Well, you might know from my second name that I'm Black African. I was raised in Nigeria, and so I've lived with domestic violence around me. Fortunately, I had a dad who was quite aware of it, interestingly, and he was always very conscious about it. He never ever smacked any of us or, thought about even laying hands on my mother. So there was really no domestic violence in my own family, but I saw it around me, and I know that it was quite common back home in Nigeria. So I'm quite interested in it because I see how destructive it is. Not just for the women who obviously are mostly the victims of domestic violence, but as well on the men, because there's an African proverb that says that if you hold someone down on the ground, you will never be able to stand up until you release them. So you will never be able to get up and be who you are until you stop harming the person you've got on the ground. So it harms the men as well. So I'm interested in it in a personal way, in a cultural way, as well as in my work. I teach social work, and if there's anything about social work, is how to help people who are disadvantaged, who are oppressed, who are abused, to release them from those kinds of harm. And so definitely I'm interested in so many ways, and I look forward to this conversation.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Let me bring on our other guest to also introduce herself. Hello, Kim.
Hello there. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it is a pleasure to have you.
Well, my name is Kim Bacchus, and I am a women's empowerment life coach and a domestic abuse advocate. I'm also a corporate trainer and a public speaker and an ordained minister, and I'm author of 4 books.
Yes.
And I haven't embarked on my own journey of empowerment and freedom from domestic abuse as well for myself. I'm on a mission to become a beacon of hope to helping other women find their inner strength and to live the best life that they can now.
All right. Please tell us a little bit about the book that you've written in terms of the subject, because I know that you've written the book entitled "Stop Hurting Me."
Are you talking about this book?
Oh!
I'm getting good at this. Are you talking about this book, Stop Hurting Me, Time to Get Up? Well, it improves, shows you about how to improve, how to survive, how to live in an abusive relationship, how to reconstruct your life as well, and how to rediscover peace more than anything as well. And it's my story, basically, and it's on Amazon.
Oh, thank you very much.
Tony, shut this door, please.
We'll be posting the flyer, so that people would see your book at some point in this discussion. All right. Thank you very much. Let me bring on my third guest. Hello, Imani.
Hi. Hello.
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm not too bad. Thank you very much for inviting also.
If you could move up a little bit, it appears that the writing is covering your face. So if you could move up a little bit, that would be better. Yes.
Is that better?
That is absolutely better. Okay. Yes. Okay, so Imani, boy, man, I know that you've worked in Birmingham forever. And please tell people about yourself. About yourself.
Okay. Basically, I was born in Wolverhampton, came to Birmingham at the age of 9, and lived in Birmingham all my life. However, my background is youth work initially, and then on that went on to learning disabilities, adults with learning disabilities, then went on to actually look at finding employment with individuals with learning disabilities before moving into children's services. While in children's services, I've done education welfare. I've worked in the area offices itself. And in 2014, when MASH was arise, we had actually developed a strategy just to look at DV per se, with the head of service, and we based basically had the multi-agency hub, which is part of MASH, and a dedicated team to domestic abuse, whereby I would work alongside a multi-agency support of police, mental health, health in itself, women's aid, and any other agency that is looking at women generally, or abuse of that nature in terms of domestic abuse. So I've sort of done that for quite a while, and my interest in it is that I think for a lot of people it's a case of growing up. Although I didn't see it within my own household, I knew of people that were going through it as a child, not realizing what it was. But I think when you see that, I think at the time it was seen as, well, it's part and parcel of life, and it becomes an accepted behavior. And it's only when you then go through what oppression is, and coming from a social work background, you realize that what people were actually going through was domestic abuse. But at the time, I can honestly say it isn't as, well, shall I say, it wasn't as not well known. It was there. It wasn't as advertised. It wasn't so clear. But now we have more education. It's a lot more being made aware in the community, that we just have to look at it, because it devastates lives. At the end of the day, it really does. So yeah, that's me. That's my background, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We'll be going into our discussion very soon, but before we do that, please, let's get into this discussion. Let's get into this topic. Please invite your friends, share it with somebody who would benefit from this discussion. Indeed, every time we treat a topic that is as I'll say sensitive and powerful as this one, we need to be able to send a note and a question. That this discussion might bring, I will say, very, raw emotions for you. This discussion might bring some sensitive issues for you. Please, we are saying that don't suffer in silence. If it's all possible, please call us and let's discuss how we can support you and support each other. There are also some numbers on our screens. Please, it is not an exhaustive list. There are so many organizations out there that would help if you experience any difficulties with this. So please do not suffer in silence. Let's bring on a few people who have already joined us. Yes, thank you very much, Laura, as we mentioned. Thank you very much, Claire. Claire is coming on next week. Oh, she's coming on next week. We're going to revisit the topic of youth crime. So thank you, Claire, for watching. Yes, obviously, this is an important topic that affects all of us, including men. Hello, Trudy. Trudy's become one of our, I would say, loyal viewers, and Trudy does her best to be able to tune in, even though I know that she's back at work. So thank you very much for tuning in. Oh, what is Laura saying? That, oh, hello, our beautiful guests. Thank you very much for that comment. Please, make a comment if you join us. As I can see, I see a few people who are joining us. So please, make it. Inshraba is also watching. Thank you very much for joining, Jemima. You've become one of our regular viewers, and we're going to get into our discussion today. I know John is watching. John is going to help us give them help. John is one of our executives at the Ghanaian Social Workers Association. All right, so without much ado, today we are going to be getting into our discussion for today. Today we are going to be looking again at the subject of domestic abuse. But before then, what is domestic abuse to you? I would want to invite you to be able to give your views about what you think domestic abuse is. Some people also refer to it as domestic violence. But the general and widely accepted term these days is domestic abuse because it encompasses, everything. It is not limited to violence. So please share your views in terms of what you think of this subject as I bring on my guests as they talk about this. So let me bring on Dr. Bess. Doctor, what in your view is domestic abuse?
I think there's a risk of trying to define it legally or the way that it's done intellectually, academically. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it in a simpler way. It's a harm, any kind of harm that occurs between partners who live in a home. So it's usually something that happens out of sight of people who are not living in a family. So for that reason, it can carry on for a very long time before anybody knows that it's happening. It's almost like one of those secrets. So it happens between adults in a home, but I know that right now people are thinking about it happening between grown-up adults who are not in a sexual relationship, but it's usually between partners in a home. So any kind of violence, and I'll name a few. It could be financial, it could be sexual, it could be emotional, it could be psychological, physical. And right now, the UK government has declared a very new one, coercive control. So anything that harms you in a relationship with someone who lives in a home. So it's exclusive to families.
Thank you very much. And the comments are coming in. People are giving their views in terms of what they think is domestic abuse. Keep them coming in. I don't know what is happening to Kim, but her camera is turned off or it's gotten dark. So in the meantime, I'm going to bring in Imani to come and share from your perspective, from the way it affects us. It affects us, differently in all places. So, Imani, from your view, what constitutes domestic abuse?
I think following the first discussion in terms of the response, I think to add on to that is that it also encompasses the fact that it has no age limit. And although we look at the issues of intimacy with maybe a partner, we also have to consider that the relationship within a family dynamics is also an issue of concern. Because it doesn't always encompass husband or wife or partners. It can also encompass extended family members who, for whatever reason, have no fear of actually perpetrating that kind of behaviour, maybe because they've seen it, or it could be a cultural thing for some individuals. So it's not just, it's not a hard and fast thing. It really does look at from the age 16 onwards. It could be anything. It could be anything. It could be, in fact, a relationship where you don't actually live with the individual. Say, for instance, a 16-year-old, they may live in different households. They may be together in terms of their relationship. However, the domestic abuse can still continue to carry on. So it's a bit more complicated, I think, than it's just between two individuals, because it also can encompass children that will probably get abused in the process, family members also, and we're not looking at an age limit. An age limit could be from 16 to 75. Abuse has no sort of cut-off points, as we know, or as we think it does. It could be anybody. So, I think that, yes, there is also the issues of the sexuality, encompasses physical, the emotional, psychological aspects. But as I said, it doesn't have a cut-off point. It could be anyone. And it doesn't just mean it's the intimacy of a partner or partnership relationship. If you live in a household where that is happening, then in some cases you find that a mother-in-law will actually abuse her daughter-in-law. And with physical violence as well as verbal violence as well. So it's wider than just having just an intimate relationship. It can go wider than that.
Thank you very much. Initially, your sound was a little bit muffled, but I think it got better as we got on.
Oh, so, sorry.
So wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Let me bring on Kim to also give a perspective of what domestic abuse is.
Okay, have you got my camera back? Can you see me clearly now?
Yes,
okay,
yes, we've got you back.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Technology. Okay, for me, domestic abuse, firstly, more than anything else, and just to understand that it's all about power and control. Okay, it's all about power and control. And domestic violence encompasses many abuses within that umbrella, as some of the ladies have mentioned as well. And, you know, it can be defined as like a controlling behavior, coerciveness, threatening, degrading someone, acting in a violent behavior as well. And that could be with a partner or an intimate partner or your husband, or it could be with different sorts of people. But I know we're going to cover this later on, so I won't talk about that now. But from a non-Western cultural perspective, domestic abuse can include the same as what I've just mentioned, but it can also include a dowry-related violence, marital rape, female mutilation, and other traditional practices which are very harmful to women. It's a choice that the perpetrator makes. Okay, so it's all about power and control.
All about power and control. I want to bring on Dr. Opokri here. So I think that some of, as our guests were describing it, they mentioned that, you know, it can affect a lot of us. Some people think that we are immune from it. Some people think that it cannot happen to us. So how do we experience domestic abuse?
Well, it comes in so many ways. There's an MP, a Labour MP here in the UK, Rosie Duffy.
Yes.
And she made everyone weep, literally, where she made people cry in the House of Commons, where she talked about her experience of domestic violence. So she was in this relationship with this man who was paying her a lot of compliments and bringing chocolate and being nice and sweet. But then, like Kim said, the control started seeping in. And that control was happening through things like your top was a bit loose, or why was your top showing your boobs a bit too much, or your dress is a bit too short, or so many ways. And so somebody who's nice, very pleasant and sweet outside, it could become incremental. So I would say it's a process rather than a thing, rather than an event. So it's something that happens gradually or happening regularly. So it's not often a one-off. So it's important, I think, to watch out for the experience of it. So experience is a good word because it's not an event. I can see Imani nodding, yes, because I will let her come in there.
Imani, do you want to join in terms of what we're talking about? That how does it affect people? What are the types of it? What are the forms of it? And I think that you've alluded to some of it in your conversations. Yes.
Yeah, I think there is so many things that that can allude to what's going on with that individual, and I think when you're in a relationship, it's the disrespect. It's also the emotional, oh, you're stupid. And again, we've already been told in terms of the way we look, how we talk to people. And I think there is this thing also where that when you're in that relationship, you are very mindful of what you say, you do, how you present yourself, in case whatever you've done in terms of the way you look or how you say something will then trigger something with regards to the abusive partner. I remember seeing once when I actually had to speak to a mom, and when you're talking to her, all she kept doing is looking at the door because her fear was that this man could just walk straight through. The other thing is that everything about her physical being was very much inward. She would sort of hold her hands together, very much clasp them. You could see she was a little bit uneasy. She didn't want to talk too loud for fear that someone else would hear it. And you get a general sense of being petrified if they come through the door. And even when she went and left the office, I remember she was looking, and she didn't actually leave the office and go straight out. She was looking around the corner to see if he or anyone that he knew could see her coming in. So I think it takes over your whole life, that you're very guarded in terms of what you say.
Yeah.
You're guarded in terms of what you do, because of the fear that that individual, the perpetrator, has put into you.
Yeah.
And you've got, I suppose it's a survival thing also, where they don't say anything initially because they're fearful that it may go back to them. But I have seen it happen not just to women, but I've also seen it to men. And yes, there is a power. And we see it more so in women than we do see in men. And when I have seen it in a male, I have to say I was quite shocked, because when I saw the partner, she was only 5 foot. This man was a towering 6 foot, but it's the power she had over him that made him feel he couldn't challenge anything that she did. So when we look at the, either coercive behavior, or control, let's not think of it as just a physical thing. It's an emotional thing, which actually happens to people, where it stops them dead in their tracks. It stops them from doing anything. So I think for me, it's the biggest bit is the control. But as I said, being in the line of work that I've been in, I've seen it where we've had the same sex as well issues, where there's control in the same sex relationships. We've had it whereby, one is quite dominant and very, very, very much saying, well, you need to do this. I know what's best for you. So, it's all of that we have to, you have to contend with when you see things like domestic abuse going on. And in terms of what one of our panelists have said with regards to forced marriages and whatever, South Asian individuals, I have seen it where there appears to be the lack of respect. It's as if the woman herself has no power whatsoever. She can't challenge, she mustn't challenge, and therefore she has to go along with whatever. But it's not just the fact that the man has said this to her, it becomes then everybody within that particular cultural society tends to feel that that's what you've got to go along with. What you're moaning about, don't moan. Oh, don't worry, it'll get better. And it seems to be this thing where it's been perpetuated. So for me, it's been an eye-opener. Dealing with women or dealing with domestic abuse has been an eye-opener for me as a practitioner.
Yeah.
But it's been one where I think with all your panelists, it's the passion that you have wanting to change that behavior and change it from a cultural perspective.
Thank you very much. I want to bring him back into the conversation. Why does it go on so much without it being detected? What is it about us that make domestic abuse go on? And I mean, we are all worried and we're petrified, especially with this pandemic, because the restrictions has meant that we don't go out that often. People are having to be able to live together, so how, you share your experience in terms of how other people experience it, and why is it going on so much undetected? Why is it never reported?
Okay, I think you've asked quite a few questions in there. Okay,
yeah.
So I think let me throw that one back at you. Are you asking the question as why don't victims come forward?
Yes.
or leave the relationship? Is that what you're asking?
I mean, it's both in terms of why is it that people keep quiet about it, and and how is it affecting? I mean, that is the angle I'm looking at it. How is it affecting us, and if it's affecting us, how come it's going on undetected and nobody talks much about it?
Okay, well, from a victim's point of view, okay, a victim, does not talk about it or doesn't tell people about it for many reasons. And one being that they are absolutely petrified and scared to say anything to anyone. Okay. Number two, they could be isolated. They may not be able to get out to see people, to speak about it. Number three, they're also feeling quite ashamed. They're feeling embarrassed to talk about something like this. You've got to remember that 9 out of 10 perpetrators are very charming. They're very nice. They're very kind. Everybody loves them. But behind closed doors, it's something completely different. For a victim to come out and talk so openly about somebody that everyone is so fond of can cause a lot of problems. It could cause disbelief as well. And the victim still has to go home with that perpetrator behind closed doors. So there is a lot of reasons why a victim cannot say anything in regards to this matter, or why they probably do want to say something. I remember I did want to say something to people, but I was just too scared. I wouldn't dare say anything to anyone. And you know, and another thing as well, a victim becomes is not the same person. The victim changes over time, their personality, they lose who they are. They don't recognize themselves anymore. They're not the same person. They don't have that confidence or that self-esteem anymore to step out and to say, hey guys, somebody help me, you know, this is what's happening. That's why it's so important to know how to help somebody that you see or you suspect that's been abused without actually without telling them what to do, because like we all know, you can't tell a victim to leave. A victim will leave when they're ready to leave. But they're crying out for help secretly. But it's a very psychological, emotional hold that somebody has. You may be fearful to leave your home because that's the only life you know, being abused. You think that's quite normal to be abused, and just the thought of leaving makes you feel so scared because the outside world is not the world that you're used to. Not having any sort of knowledge, not being able to get any kind of education on the matter about what you'll be surprised how many people are in an abusive relationship but do not know it is abuse. Okay, that was exactly my situation. I was in an abusive relationship for many years and I had no idea. It was a TV show that made me see in 10 minutes that light bulb coming on and recognizing what abuse was, and that I actually had a sign that said I am a victim of domestic abuse, and I had no idea. And it was that day that I think that whenever the penny dropped, that I decided that I could not live this way anymore. And I think that's another thing that holds people back, is not knowing what they're in. They think it's actually quite normal to be abused, to be physically abused, to be verbally abused, to be financially abused, to be spiritually abused as well, and they think it's very, very normal. So that's why I think a lot of women and men don't talk about it and come out and say anything to anyone. I hope that answers your question.
It does. And Kim, I think that we'll be coming back to talk about your story. We just want to get in a little bit to find out how it was for you and how you came out of it. And you know, so we will come back to it a little bit. I'm just checking whether the men are getting engaged with this, because I've seen that Imani is ready to go. I'm just encouraging our men that we want to get into this discussion. We want to find out from our perspective, how are we experiencing this, if any of us are, and whether we're going to be brave enough to share. I think that we will do a special a show that will be dedicated to men, for us to be able to come and really, you know, talk about our experience. Yes, I'm hoping so. Let me come to Imani here.
I was just going to say, in terms of what Kim has said, that, you know, it resonates to what you see when you actually work with women live with domestic abuse. I think the other thing is that when you talk to some of the women and you ask them, you know, do you feel you can continue to stay in that relationship? One of the things is that financially they can't come out of there, and also the fact that they like the trappings. They've got a nice house. Right. They're not sure how they're going to be able to walk away from all of that. What will happen to the children? It's their stability, it's their dad. So when we look at domestic abuse, it's not just one thing. There's so many other things that allows or makes a woman feel that she has to remain in that relationship. Because it's, if you say, for instance, you're not getting much, you're dependent on him in terms of finances, then really you're going to be thinking, well, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to pay bills? Can I afford this? Where the kids are going to go. And also the fact that when you look at fleeing domestic abuse, the woman flees with the children. Again, you're looking at, how am I going to do that effectively? Will I be able to manage that? Children will have to move from their schools. They'll have to move their friends, all of those things. So it's not one thing that's going to say, yes, I've got to go. They look at so many other things when they're actually looking at deciding, are they going to flee from the situation? Because it's not just the fact that you're leaving the abusive partner, it's what else you're going to be leaving behind. Until you pick up that courage and that strength to say, you know what, I've had enough. I can't deal with this. I'm going. And you leave everything. You don't think about it after that.
Okay, let me bring Dr. Opokri in.
Yes. I was going to add to Imani's comments. When I think about the African context, I know that if I say this, a lot of Africans will recognize it, especially women. There's a pressure on an African woman to get married. It's as if you're not married, you're not yet a woman. So an African woman is under serious pressure to get married. And then when you get married and you are in this abusive relationship, even if you tell your friends or your family members, and I mean your side of the family, that you're being abused, if you come out and say it, many of them are likely to tell you, come on, everybody deals with this. What are you going to do? You can't leave your husband. Having it being the most important thing in life, to suddenly you wanting to get out of there is so at odds with what an African woman is. And so you're trapped in there. And what I know of domestic violence, where I've seen it, not just when I was as a child protection social worker, but as an African in our family relationships, even here in the UK, you find that they're in this and thinking about everyone else but themselves. So they're thinking about how their uncles, their aunties, those who went for the dowry, those who were there during the wedding, they'll ask whether they'll ask them to return the money, the dowry bride price. That, is a very African thing where you get dowry or bride price. Those kinds of questions play on their minds way before they think about the risks to themselves and their lives and their children. And another thing I wanted to say is the idea of respect. That respect is a very cultural thing, respect. And when you marry, you swear literally an oath of respect as an African to your spouse, to your husband. So I'm talking about heterosexual relationships, that you're going to respect this man. And a lot of it is then used in a spiritual way and cultural way to say, they will quote the Bible at you. If you think about something like slavery actually being, people were using the Bible, using spirituality to endorse slavery. It's the same thing that's happening here. People will quote the Bible at you, that in the Bible somewhere it says a man would control his woman and the woman has to subsume herself or something like that to the man. And so with all these things tied together, it's a full-on trap that the woman cannot exit. And then when you think about the fact that children in an African culture, at least most of them, are not matrilineal. So they're patriarchal cultures where the man owns the child, man owns the children. And if this woman's going to flee, unlike here in the UK, where often if a woman is fleeing, she'll flee with the children. And you're very unlikely to get courts that will hand over children to a man who's been accused of domestic violence. That's not very common here in the UK. It does happen, but it's not very common. But in the other settings, in our African settings, you find that the children are the man's children, and you would be hard pressed to find whether the police, any kind of authority that's going to take the children and give to the woman or help the woman to flee with the children. So when women think about the fact that they're going to leave their children behind, they'd rather die there. And many of them do. Many of them do. The statistics are not even there. They'd rather die in that marriage or in that relationship than flee without their children. So there's all of these things tied in with spirituality and culture and respect. And it's such a whole big mess for the woman. And she's in there stewing in this pot of respect and culture that literally takes her life. It's so deeply troubling. And so when I think about it, I'm thinking about maybe how the authorities can be involved more. When I think about the African, I'm talking about the African sector here, as a community, Africans, thinking about the way the authorities can come in a bit more, because for women in the African setting, that's the difference. You're thinking about, you are going to leave your children when you leave.
Before I go to Kim for her to share her experience and her story, the things that you've said has got me thinking that, in Africa, marriages, I mean, I know that marriages are expensive, but we put on a show. We go the extra mile to put on a show. And not only a show, sometimes, unfortunately, our families can be very demanding in terms of the bride price or the dowry that you refer to, where there's a tallest of things that you need to be able to purchase. It's almost as if you have to compensate the whole family for coming to take their daughter away. I'm thinking, does that contribute to the fact that you are thinking that I've bought you? You now basically my property. The amount of money that I've spent, that means that I can treat you anyhow. Does that contribute to that narrative? I'm kind of thinking here that perhaps we must rethink some of the things that we do culturally, which then unfortunately would give that impression that, because I've spent so much and I've done so much, then, perhaps maybe so much is demanded of you. Before I move on to Kim, Dr. Pokri.
Absolutely. You've just nailed it. That's it. Because that's what happens in the marriages. First of all, you're pushed to marry, whether or not you're ready. The minute you hit 22, 23, everyone's looking at you. How long are you going to sit on the fence or on the shelf for, and things like that. And so you're forced to go in, marry this person or be in a relationship. And the money, as you say, is so expensive. Our marriages are, well, there is no list of invitees because everybody turns up and you have to feed everybody. And there's so much money that's spent, as you said, on the dowry and the bride price and all of that. And so people feel trapped. And when people feel trapped, you think about so many scenarios. Even now, I'm thinking about a pregnant woman. And we also know, like Kim and Imani know, that domestic violence is highest when a woman is pregnant. Yeah. Because that's when she's most vulnerable.
Yes.
And also, that's the time when, if I could say, there's less sex going on in the marriage or in the relationship. And so the man might also see her as a little bit unattractive. That's the time when, if he's going to cheat, he's likely to cheat. And all sorts of things going on in the middle of that time. And we know already that psychologically, men, to some extent, might feel isolated from this new person. That's
a bit jealous.
A bit jealous, yes, a bit jealous. This person is so much closer to their partner than they are. So all of that bringing in the mix, that this woman is quite vulnerable at this time. And so you have this really solid picture of tradition and culture and finance and all of that going in, and the man feeling a need to exert himself, because that's what it is. It's always about control. So if this person now has a new baby inside us, is making me feel a bit isolated from my partner, how can I exert control to tell her, I am still the boss. I'm still the man, the main person in charge. You can't love this new person better than you love me. And even with their children, it's the same thing. Maybe you're paying attention to the children. There are so many things that trigger it. But the more I think about it from an African perspective, the more I think some of the customs, yes, definitely do add to the burden. and do add to the reasons women stay in it, and everyone else so involved in their lives. We're not very nuclear in Africa in the sense that you and your partner and your children are doing your own thing. You have extended family members, people so involved in your life. So, very distant aunties and uncles and cousins, really very important and having a huge say to whether you stay in an abusive marriage or not. So there's so many pressures on someone who's been abused. It's even when they have the courage to do something about it, the pressures can be really high from that setting.
Okay, I'm going to go to Kim in a minute, but I would attempt here because, we are the Ghanaian Social Workers Association, and our outreach programs are really targeted at Ghanaians in churches and in organizations, and most of them don't have a good command over the English language. And we try and go and break it down. And one of my, my team members, did say that I have to make it a point to try and summarize it a little bit in our local language. And so I'm going to attempt at that. And a friend saying, "Your guest ne can say, ye entity ya mamre and ye ma ye your crumono and then ma sa a friend saying a bro any yakayaka dear and mano ecoso. And to the omoka say, ye money ye will feel no, yen try see a bejai. Ebia na or bemana banna ye a friend saying, ye say and one dear near ye the number bebre koto a friend saying potomanto koto way koto a friend saying snap adaka be ma koto way sanya mana enema edu be bia sanya no ebaso efen so na busuafo so de omo agi je say answer aware a otim no busuafo nyina de omo agi enti no so ko eka ho enema sa de we ha adwen pa. So all I said was that the family contributes to this narrative, and the fact that we overburden sometimes the men who come to marry our daughters, it's also a contributing factor. Now, we want to move on swiftly to Kim, and then I want her to share her personal story, if that is okay.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's really good. I love the language. It's so cool. I'm obviously not Ghanaian, but my background, my family are Caribbean. We're from the Caribbean. Okay, so I don't know if we're much different as well in our culture and the way we do things and the way we think also. But I got involved with someone who I absolutely adored. I just thought I hit the jackpot when I met this person. He was lovely. He was charming. Everybody loved him. And I just thought, wow, this is it. Then as I started to get into the relationship, I started to realize that what was happening over a couple of years down the line is that I was actually harboring such a big secret. And my secret is that I was actually trapped in a psychological trap called love, which I thought was love, but it was really domestic abuse. And when I say that is that many people get into relationships and certain abuse happens, and because if you're not knowledgeable about these abuse symptoms, you can actually believe that what that person is doing is actually saying, I love you. For instance, my abuser would control me, would say, whether I can go out, whether I could, what I must wear, even to the food and what time I slept. And the reason he said, and listen to this, he said the reason why he did that was because he cares for me, because he really cares. He didn't want me to go outside because he didn't want me to get hurt. He wanted me to wear certain things because that actually suited me when it didn't really suit me at all. And so it's about, and so there again, there you have the control aspect of something going on in a relationship. During the relationship, I mean, the first thing that actually started with me was the actual verbal abuse. And this is a general form of psychological abuse. This is when someone says something to you, they speak to you, they put you down, they're calling you names, they're being unreasonable, they're criticizing you. And that's how it started with me. And I took it as nothing. I just thinking, well, sometimes he either had a bad day, or he didn't mean it, because he always said he was sorry and that he loved me. And when you're with somebody, you want to believe that they love you, so you buy that, and that's what I did. Then the next incident came, was the physical abuse. I'm naming them because this is for the benefits of the viewers that are listening, because it's all very well us talking about domestic abuse, but if you don't know the symptoms, this is something that can actually save your life. Next one was physical abuse, and the physical abuse is a physical act or threat. It's designed to harm you, your body physically. Okay, that could include slapping, punching, pulling hair, and kicking, all of the above, which happened to me. Okay. Wow. And then as someone mentioned about the emotional abuse, which is a psychological abuse. Okay, this consists of a behavior that's designed to hurt you emotionally. Okay, it's like yelling at you, making you scared, threatening you, humiliating you, shaming you, giving and making you feel like you're stepping on eggshells around them. And you know what you must understand here, guys, is that the physical abuse, okay, people associate domestic abuse with physical abuse. That's secondary. What comes first is the psychological abuse. It's when they start playing mind games with you. It's when they start to abuse you emotionally. Okay, then they get you in a position, okay, where you're just hopeless. You just can't do nothing for yourself, and then the physical abuse starts after that. Then what came after that was the actual financial abuse, where I wasn't allowed to go and study. I wasn't allowed to, have any money that I had that I worked. He took it. He had to have access to all the bank accounts. He wasn't, any financial information he kept to himself. I didn't see anything that was happening with the money that I worked for. So that's what was happening to me also. Another thing was spiritual abuse. Now, a lot of people don't know about this thing called spiritual abuse, okay? It revolves around a person's spirituality or their religion. And for me, it was like he was always attacking my belief system. He wasn't of faith, and I thought he was. And he was, he denied me sometimes access to go into the house of worship, to a church. And so that was another thing that he did as well. So that's another form of abuse. Now, someone else spoke about something called coercive control, okay? Yeah. And what you got to know is that came out in 2015, okay? It was created in regards to controlling behavior. All right, it's designed to isolate you, to exploit you, to take away your independence and all your regular behaviors. Okay, so for me, I can give you just a few pointers. Okay, one of the things that he did for me was taking control over every aspect of my life, such as where I went, who I saw, what I wore, what time I can sleep. That is a form of coercive control. And can I tell you that what you have to know here, and this is about knowing your rights, okay? Coercive control is illegal in England and Wales, okay? And if you know what they are, you have rights to go to the police. You have rights to get help. These things are illegal. You'll be surprised the emails and the women and the men that I speak to that tell me when I do my training, I had no idea. I've been living with this like for 10 years. I didn't know that was they couldn't do that to me. I didn't know that was allowed. Another thing as well you don't know is financial abuse, okay, when they control your money. Even if that person is the breadwinner, okay? The law, not me, says that one person cannot stop another person accessing money, okay, and giving them this punitive allowance. That's against the law, okay? You can get help for that also. The list goes on. If I had time, I would have gone through that list with you because it's so important to know your rights and what's illegal, because that law came out and a lot of people have been living in situations, okay, that like depriving them of basic needs such as food, money, and clothes. Do you know that's illegal? Okay, that is illegal. And, these things are so important, like threatening to kill you, threatening to harm you, threatening to take your wages away from you, preventing you from accessing education. Okay, if they stop you from studying on education, something to better yourself economically, that is against the UK law in England and Wales as well. So in my relationship, all that happened. Okay, all of that was happening to me. How I left, what I told you, and very quickly, was that I'm a true believer in education. Okay. Education is the key. They said my people perish for lack of knowledge. Okay, it was lack of knowledge that kept me in bondage in that relationship. But one day I switched on the TV, and this lady called Oprah Winfrey came on, and she was doing a show on domestic violence. I sat there, and do you believe it? I was actually feeling so sorry for these other women. I went, oh gosh, poor, look at her. Oh my God, really? And when one woman said, she started to tell her story, and it got my attention because I thought she was speaking about me. Her story was identical to me about the abuse that she had been experiencing. And then this other lady came on who had been through it and is out of it, and she was one of the presenters, and she said, let me tell you something, folks, that what you perceive as love is not love, it's domestic abuse. And right there and then the penny dropped, the light bulb came on for me, and I remember bursting into tears, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I got a title, I'm a victim of domestic abuse. Oh my God, this is not normal. What I had perceived as love was actually abuse. The penny had dropped. So that's what I'm saying to you guys, understand the different kinds of abuse, understand the different kind of coercive control. If you don't know anything else, you don't have to be a scientist. It's not rocket science. Okay, when you know this, okay, side of you will happen where you meet a guy and he's been really nice to you, and then he does something off, you'll be like, I remember I heard that on a show, that's not right, that nah. And what are you going to do? Let me tell you what you do. You're going to run for your life. Okay, don't entertain it, don't stay there. You're better than that, you're worth more than that. Okay, run when you see that. You have nothing to lose. Okay, so understand your rights, understand what abuse is. I've done it deliberately so you can hear the different forms of abuse, so you can understand it. And so basically that's what made me decide I had to make a move, and that's about now I had to start to plan my way to escape, which I did. And I live to tell the tale today. Basically, I'm here to tell it. But there is a story. But like I said, it's all in my book. If you want to know more, get my book. It's on Amazon. But
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you can speak your experience and laugh about it.
Oh gosh, yes. It's made me who I am today.
Stronger.
Yes, it's made me who I am today. It really, really has. It's made me more determined to help other people as well to understand this whole complex subject. It is a complex subject, okay? It's quite deep, and understanding how, even understanding how a perpetrator would be thinking, understanding how a victim would be thinking at the time, thinking how you can help someone if you knew someone was in that situation. What do? Do you know what I mean? It's when you know this, and I say knowledge is key, guys. When you understand, the light bulb will come on. As I always say, when you know the truth will set you free. So that's the bottom line for me, and it really does help. Honestly, to God, yeah.
Wow.
Kim, can I draw into what you're saying? I like the idea, the message, very strong message that you're saying to women. Run. And also to the men, just run. It's a very good message, very clear, and it's just saying, get up and clear out of there. The minute that person is not there, the minute they turn their backs, pack, just take your handbag if you have to, clear out. But then I want to then reach out to parts of my birth continent where women may actually struggle to do that. And so I'm going to speak to those listening who are family members to someone they may know who is experiencing this.
Yes.
Because a lot of these women may not be able to run because of their experiences. They're in places where they cannot take their children for very clear reasons, financial, the way the culture is, and just the lack of support from authorities. If you're listening and you know that you're a family member or a friend of someone who might be in this situation, I would encourage you to be the rock for that person, to be a person who is open. So open your eyes to other people's experience. So other people who might be experiencing this, whether they're friends, their family members, even those who are married into our families. I'm talking about the African context here. Think about them and see how you can help them to run. So they may not be able to run alone because the authorities may not be able to help them to run. You can see yourself as facilitating that, thinking about keeping your eyes peeled in the sense that you understand this person, my neighbor, my friend is experiencing domestic violence. Yes. How can I help? A cousin is experiencing. What can we as a family do? Because the family is often takes on the state responsibilities in much of the African context. So if as family members they come together and say, this is wrong, when you see it, call it out. Call it out. Call it out amongst your family members, your friends that you know, and see what you can do collectively. Because the family often takes the place of the state. So don't think, oh, you know, this person is experiencing this. Oh, I wish I could help. You can help. Because if that person gets any kind of solidarity from you or anyone else, they'll be able to run. Kim is recommending that you run. But we can help people to run where the state isn't there to support them. So that's just something I want to add to that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Yeah, totally agree.
But before I come to Imani,
Kim, can
a friend said, Madam Cynthia say, Johnny, run. Na say anyabiano say oni no omuni a friend say nkrata wo krom a na say aban ntimi mbo omo a asodie say just say ebo omo you can know say omuni nkrata if they have no recourse to they have no recourse to public funds and they don't have any entitlements and they are financially deprived. Please, let's come together and help. Entino umayambua Imani, working as a social worker and working in the field that was dedicated to address domestic abuse and domestic violence, how are people going to access support in that? And just quickly, I've noticed the essays that John is putting on there in terms of men's perspective. I wish we had the time to be able to go through all that, but we'll come to because we did say that because we didn't have unfortunately a man to agree to come in onto our show, that John was going to help, and I've seen that he's putting essays there in terms of men perspective. We'll try and look at it briefly. But let me come back to you, Annie. What can people do? Because in your experience, and when you had that team to support people, especially those people from the Black ethnic minority groups where they speak very limited English, that they come from these backgrounds where the family is quite unsupportive and they expect you to stay and die in those relationships and they don't have any recourse to public funds. What are the help out there for them, and how were you supporting these people?
Okay, what we would do is normally we'd screen every case that comes through with regards to domestic abuse. I think one of the things for me as a practitioner was that although we could assess the situation in a multicultural, or shall I say multi-agency perspective, the thing that we wanted to develop in that team was that as social workers that are looking at the cases live there and then, was to be able to follow that through by working with these women and to basically give them that support from the point of when we get it until when it actually ends. So as long as they got the support and everything else, it would be the same person. We didn't get a chance to do that. However, I did find that sometimes when working with other agencies, the battle that we had is to try and say, in terms of advocating on behalf of that woman, is the fact that she didn't put herself in that situation deliberately. We've got to look at all the context in terms of what's actually happening, how it got to this point, and what support we could offer. I think one of the things I found is that even as professionals, not just from social work, but professionals generally, there was this thing about, well, it's her own fault. Why didn't she come out of it sooner? and things like that. And it's interesting when I heard what Kim had to say. It'd be interesting to know that the fact that Kim must have been in that relationship for quite a long time before she made that leap to go. And we've got to do assessments a lot much better, I have to say. We've got to look at everything. There is an issue for me in terms of looking at domestic abuse, especially from a cultural point of view or from an ethnicity point of view, where sometimes Black and Asian women are treated differently to their white counterparts when we're looking at domestic abuse. And so sometimes as a Black social worker, I'm there fighting for that individual to ensure they get that support, they get what they need to get in terms of any other agencies, and also, you know, what they're actually saying about what's happening to them. So from a social worker's point of view, working in that position, I find myself a lot of the time trying to defend the woman's action in wanting to go, but also trying to support her in terms of making sure that she got the adequate support that is out there for her. Because when you're working in an agency setting, I just found that the police, your health will have a different view, and especially if they come from a different background, they had a different view, as if, you know, we don't feel the same as what our white counterparts would feel in terms of domestic abuse. So it was a very difficult situation, but I think what it is, it's about education. It's about looking at how we train our social workers, the organisation itself, looking at what their responsibility is when we look at domestic abuse. We need to stop blaming the victims for when they go through certain issues of domestic abuse. And I think it's just changing the way we look at things from a social worker's perspective. I think the old-fashioned social work, we've moved on from there now. We need to be moving with the times. And sometimes I get the impression we don't move with the times the way we should. We tend to still be, you know, working from the perspective of the 70s, maybe the 80s, and it's like we've got blinkers on. We don't realise that this is it's quite big and it needs to be addressed. So there needs to be that conversation within the training we have as social workers and also the organisation. There needs to be that dialogue so we can change the perspective or change the narrative which we currently have around domestic abuse.
And I'm going to come to Dr. Pokri in a second. I think that we are failing people as social workers because we know that for a very long time that people have no recourse to public funds. And when our managers are controlling the budgets, and I know you know, some head of services are listening, so I'm speaking proverbially to them. When they are so concerned about the budgets and about making sure that, you know, we fit into the government budgets, and they squeeze, because we used to have dedicated teams for no recourse to public funds where our people were being supported. And when there were cuts, I've worked in a lot of local authorities where this has just disappeared. But as social work, as a profession that stand up for the oppressed and stand up for those who are, you know, are in need, I think that we are failing our people. I think that we need to be able to come together. We did a little bit of a clip for the British Association of Social Workers in terms of having a voice, especially in this pandemic, for people who have no recourse to public funds. And yesterday I saw a statement that is coming out of GHASWA about that. So that is the beginning of some of these narratives. But I think that we have a lot to do in supporting our people. Let me come to Dr. Pokri here.
Okay, thank you. And I'm drawing from Imani here, and I'm thinking of a student that I have. I have a doctoral student who's a researcher, whose research I'm supervising her, and her research is on members of religious organizations and how they support. So the leaders of religious organizations and how they support their members who are experiencing domestic violence. So this is quite interesting for me because when I think of the BME communities, they're very much involved to some extent in religion. So whether it's Christianity, it's Islam, whichever religion, there's we are a people of faith most of the time. So there are very few people, I think, who you call maybe Africans or BME who do not have any kind of link whatsoever to faith. So even if they actually don't believe, their family members might believe. And you'll find that that's one place where it's a bit sacred. So people revere their religious leaders. And so I would say if we really want to tackle this issue, for quite culturally, we want to go there. That's a very important place to start from. The religious leaders need to understand what domestic abuse is, all levels of it, how it's perpetuated, and how to help their members, both the perpetrators and the victims, totally eliminate domestic violence from their congregations. So I would definitely want to go there. Religious leaders, if there's a way that we can get training to these, all of them, cutting across all the religions, so that when they see their members, they will be the ones actually to help pull them out of it, in the sense of being the voice and advocate. If they need to go to the authorities, they have support. Because we know that, at least Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, and Imani, correct me if I'm wrong, that a woman would have been physically assaulted at least 35 times before she calls the police. 35 times. So it's persistent. And if the religious leaders are tuned into DV, domestic violence, they would pick up on these, and then they can be the source of support, initial support, and help the person leave this relationship, and also help the perpetrators come to their senses. I know that it's really hard. Kim knows this, and Imani knows this, that when I used to have cases on TV and I would send the men to training, the success rate was usually quite low. You know that. So the main point is to get help for the victims, and we can start with the religious leaders. I think that's a very important place to go if we want to end this.
Somebody's saying that we need
Can I also
go on, Imani?
I was going to say, with regards to what Cynthia has said, I think in terms of the position that Cynthia is in terms of training and as a lecturer, but one of the things also is that the training of the social workers need to be culturally sensitive. They need to be aware of the various cultures that they have to go out and actually advocate on behalf of. Because one of the things I think what we find is that you will get social workers that will have their prejudices. They will have their own issues of racism going on. And therefore, we as Black people in society will not get what we deserve at the end of the day to make it an equal footing at the end of the day for our clients or service users. So for me, training is imperative, especially when you've got social workers out there and you see them and they have no clue what they're doing when they're coming to an issue of DV with some of our Black workers. Some of our Black clients. So that is something that we need to sort of tackle. Now, it may be a brilliant idea. Now, we've had this pandemic. It looks like Pandora's box is now opening. We're now seeing that in terms of the BAME community, we have lost out on so many things in terms of what we should be getting as Black people. We should be getting particular services. There seems to be the shortcut. And therefore, we have to look at ourselves, even as social workers, that even our services that we're providing is not providing the best care or it's giving the best outcomes for people of color.
Okay. Let me come to Kim, and find out what help is out there. How do we as individuals, families and societies work at large? I mean, some of our viewers are saying that we did not address the issue of how people without recourse to public funds help. But if you've just joined us, I think that Dr. Opokri did say that the families have a responsibility. That if we know that people are incapable of running, then we have a responsibility as a family. Those of us who are earning an income should be able to support some of these people. And also the church has a responsibility towards it. So just to answer some of the questions that has been posed there. But Kim, in a wide scale, I mean, you've been able to come out of that situation, and you are here to tell the story and encourage all of us not to be able to be in those situations. What can people do to get out there? I mean, how can individuals, families, and societies help to prevent these abuses from going on?
That's a hard one. Okay. I'll answer a couple of the questions one by one. Okay. The first one is like, how do you help someone that's been abused? Okay. Yeah. Well, I've got something called the 4 R's. And the first one is to recognize it. Recognize the signs of power and control in a relationship, okay? The second one is to respond. Always say, I believe you, okay? Don't talk about your own experience. Don't doubt that person. Don't make that person feel that it's all in their imagination. Whether you believe it or not, you say, I believe you, okay? Because the thing what you need them to do is to trust you, okay? They've got to trust you to be able to talk to you. And that could be, as I'm hearing from the ladies, about a family member or a friend or somebody as well. If they feel they can't trust you, they're not going to talk to you. Next thing, the third one is to refer domestic abuse service providers like National Domestic Violence Helpline. There are different areas of service providers within the community as well that can help as well. As you said about the church, I'm totally in agreement with that, because I am working with churches at the moment in regards to training with them also, and with the Black Domestic Violence Domestic Abuse Forum. And we write the programs and we implement it. We're in a pilot stage at the moment, and it's really doing really well. And it's about educating church leaders. And people say to me, well, they don't want to help me. They don't want to help me. It's not that they don't want to help you. These guys just don't know what to do. Okay, it's a very scary thing to get involved with a family or an individual in your church unless you know what to do. You need help. You can't operate on your own. You need service providers. You need to be getting that into the community, knowing what's out there in your community. So should you know that you need to have safeguarding, first of all, in your church, okay? Safeguarding officers, safeguarding leads in your church, okay? Who have been trained also as well. So there's got to be a line of referrals also. And you've always got to, and the 4th R is to record date, time, the details of what was said to you, okay? Even if it's a family member, write it all down, because it will all probably come in very handy when it comes to either going to the police or going to court. You've got details of things that this person has said to you. And those are the 4 R's that I would firstly, recommend to you guys, and to just keep into that area. For me, I'm just going back quickly to your question there is, how do we as individuals and family and society allow prevent domestic abuse? For me, effective prevention can focus on a couple of things here. The first one is contact with healthcare professionals. Now, healthcare professionals are often the primary and the only point of contact and public service for battered women, okay? These professionals, if properly trained, okay, are in the best position to identify abusive situations and counsel the victims and implement interventions, okay, with other public service providers. Secondly, education. I'm huge on that. Widespread education will be a key factor in changing society's attitude and empowering women to gain control over their lives, and men, and to promote changes which would lead to improvement in a sense of dignity and in their physical and we haven't even touched on mental health, okay, and the overall well-being of a person. Number 3, helping women to be economically independent. As it was said, women don't leave their home because they think, where am I going to get money? How am I going to do it? Many women stay in destructive relationship because they will be homeless with their children if they leave, or can't support themselves and their children. So helping women or putting things in place to help them become economically independent is key. And as a society on a whole, I think we could say that perhaps the government needs to be more faster in setting bills and policies in place. But in saying that, a bill does not prevent domestic abuse, okay? So in my opinion, what is needed is a change of mindsets, okay, in regards to Stone Age traditional cultural belief, both here in the UK and in abroad, and in regards to women, educating boys and men to respect women, okay? We need to be getting into that hardcore now. Instead of the schools teaching rubbish what they do today, okay, but you can't even get a job on the education that they're teaching you to attain, okay? Teach your kids, boys, how to be respectful, okay? As boys now, to respect women. So when they grow up as men, they know how to be a gentleman. They know how to love. They know how to treat women with respect, okay? Let's start implementing this from young age, okay, and try to help these young men, young black men, understand what love and respect for a black woman is, okay? And that's my opinion, okay? Don't hold me to that, okay? That's what I think. And,
I think you are right.
That's me done there. That's me done.
Look, Kim, you are absolutely right. If you watched us from the beginning, and people are agreeing with you. People are agreeing with you.
Oh, are they? Oh, fantastic.
Oh, they are agreeing with you. Yes,
cool, man. Cool.
Absolutely agreeing with you. They are absolutely agreeing with you. If you didn't watch us from the beginning, one of the comments that I made at the beginning of this show was that the way we socialize our children, the way we train our boys in particular, the way we give them toy guns, the way we tell them to be, strong, and man should not cry, and man should be tough, and man, are we socializing our children to become violent? So some of these questions are there. As opposed to our girls, we are giving them, dolls. We're giving them utensils, toy utensils to play, to be able to nurture be nurturing. Maybe some of that should be changing in the narrative, because maybe now we are knowing that we are contributing to some of these things. The way we respond in the home as men, when our wives provoke us or do something, how do we respond? Do we respond with anger? Is that what we are teaching our children? That is how the men respond. Are we rather gentle? Do we shout? Do we scream? All these things we need to be learning from these experiences, including myself. So this is a learning curve for all of us. So thank you very much for sharing, Kim. Don't make any apology.
Can I just say one more thing, just really quickly, and just touching on your point that you've just made there also, is that what we've got to remember, domestic abuse for a perpetrator is a learnt behavior, okay?
Yes.
They didn't just step into it and say, oh, I'm going to beat you up and I'm just going to, knock 6 pence at you. They did. It's a learned behavior. They've either learned it from a home that they've come from, they've experienced abuse, and they've not dealt with it, and they're psychologically messed up now. So they don't even know how to love and treat somebody. So they're going to treat you how they own it. So they don't know. They don't have a benchmark about how to do it properly. Okay, and so that's what they're going to do. So that's why I say about yes, we would love to help you that's been abused, but we also can start learning these young boys,
Exactly.
I'm talking as young as say 9 and 10. Start talking. I mean, good God, we're quick to teach them about sex education and all rubbish on the TV. Why can't we start telling them how to respect women? Why should you do you love your mother? And if you love your mother, why would you disrespect another woman at the same time as well? Regardless of what your culture is, okay, it should be taught, because mindsets and learned behaviors, as we all know, can be changed. Okay,
yes,
so
absolutely.
Let's start doing that, and for them to respect other human beings, as simple as that. So
I want Imani. I think that Imani has not had opportunity to say something. I want Imani to come in here.
Imani.
because we'll be wrapping up. So I'll be starting. Dr. Opokri, to say your final words as we start to wrap up. But let me have opportunity for Imani to come in right now.
Well, I have to say, I've heard what Kim has to say, and it is powerful, and it's true. One of the biggest things we need to be doing as a society is that we need to take our children from very young. It doesn't have to be in school. It's us within our own community. It's with us in our homes. It's to teach our children that violence isn't the way, abuse isn't the way, and to teach our boys. I have 4 children, and 2 girls and 2 boys I've been blessed with. Both my boys, they can cook, they can clean, they can wash, exactly the same as their sisters. I have 2 grandsons, and let me tell you, their mother is a very matriarchy individual because she's probably come from a matriarchy background herself in terms of myself. But when you actually have a dispute, it's about teaching children that if you do have a dispute, that it doesn't have to be where it's physical or it's spiteful and verbal, or it takes away your dignity throughout that process. It's about doing it in a way where they can see, oh, they've had a bit of a dispute, but they've been able to manage that. It's teaching our children, how do you manage a situation which at times can be feeling a little bit difficult, but you can actually resolve that without hurting the other individual.
Yes.
It's about educating them first at home, but then it has to go on within schools, because that's another place where our children spend 8 hours a day in the classroom or in the school environment. It needs to be taught there. And I have to agree with Kim. You know, I sort of pulled my hair out when the government looked at teaching our probably 5 or 6-year-old sex. Hell no. They don't need that yet. What they do need to know is to look at respecting themselves and respecting each other. What am I teaching my child at that age about sex? So I have to say I was really against the whole issue, because for me, that isn't important. What is important is the basic fundamentals of loving one another, respecting one another, and treating people like human beings, not like animals. So for me, I have to agree with what Kim is saying. So education throughout their life is something that they're going to need. Very early age, we as parents need to take that responsibility. Whatever group you go to, community functions you go to, it needs to be continuing on in that throughout that whole process and in life. So you then actually shape decent, loving human beings that you can turn around and say, well done. We won't be having this discussion again. But at the moment, it's going to keep going because we need to start it right from the roots, the root being at home, and it follows right through. So maybe if we have teachers or schools that are saying they're putting on something like this, that maybe we need to say, no, you need to allow children to learn what is respect, what is love, what they need to be do to become decent human beings, rather than tell our child what they need to learn that sex education. I have to say, for me personally, it's not for me, but what Kim is saying is right. We have to do it from grassroots level. It's got to come from the home. It's then got to extend out. It has to. It has to.
Thank you very much, Imani. Thank you very much. Before I come to Dr. Opokri for her final words, John has written an essay and it's going to cover the screen, so warning. And he's saying that I agree. The men should sit up, especially from our community. I think fathers should be good example of how guys should treat women and what the girls should expect from the men. Women, on the other hand, teach children what their boys should expect from their wives, and girls treat their men. Women have the power to bring the best out of men. So also are men. I mean, John has written a whole essay in there, so perhaps maybe you can follow and be able to talk about it. Let me come to you, Dr. Opokri, for your final words.
John took exactly where I was going. That's exactly what I wanted to say, because I've heard a lot about the role of women, mothers in the family, in raising the children to be aware of domestic violence and how to treat with respect women. And I wanted to say that men particularly have a greater role in this, actually, because when I look back to the African context, I'll tell you very quickly before the time goes that men have this power over women almost always. And even young men, 16, 18-year-old young men growing up in the home, tend to have power over their mothers when they get to that age. And so if the man, the father, doesn't start setting that scene for his son, his 16-year-old son will not treat his wife well and will start to disrespect the mother as well as his sisters. And so it's important that men really take on this role. And I'm asking the men, because that's where it actually starts, is with the men and them controlling their behaviors. Let's get the men involved in this.
Thank you very much. That is the call to all of us as men. So I'm hoping that we're going to respond to this call. Let me come to Kim for your final words.
I would say that if your gut feeling says that's telling you that something isn't quite right and you're in your relationship, and it probably isn't, and your responsibility is your own. Your responsibility is your own happiness, no one else, okay? You are responsible for choosing that path that you go down. Turn to a friend, turn to a family member, a domestic violence helpline, a member of your church. Don't let shame or fear prevent you from reaching out, okay? We're lucky it's like Amani said, this COVID-19 is kind of like, it was horrible, but it's a blessing in disguise because it kind of shone a light on this subject. And not saying that it wasn't there. It has always been there for hundreds of years, domestic abuse, but it's made it it's highlighted it even more. So, reach out to someone. There's people that are listening. There's people that want to help you. So you'd be so surprised. Let's educate ourselves on what domestic abuse really is. And let's start to help to groom our boys and our men to respect and to protect women and talk about it. Talk about it. Out the person. Talk about it. Don't be scared. If you're in a family, it's like what Dr. Cynthia said is that, in her culture as well, that family members don't really speak about it. Speak about it. Because what's done in darkness will grow. So shine that light on it and end it. End it.
To the light.
Yes.
End it. End it.
Yes.
I end it.
Yes.
What's done in darkness will grow. Just shine a light on that and end it.
Comes out in the light.
What comes out in dark, what's done in darkness will come to light. I won't preach, but there you go.
Yeah, preach.
All right. Your final words. Your final words.
I think it's so true. I think one of the things I can say is that from my own experience of growing my daughters and having a family, is that when your daughters pick a male that they want to spend their life with, if they have seen a good role model within their own household, that's their benchmark in terms of who they want to look at or look up to. And I think, I hear exactly what, the discussion has been about, and that there are very much the perpetrators, but there are also good men out there that have been really good role models, and their children have taken from that. And I can only speak for myself in terms of my daughters, where they have picked men similar to their father. And they have a relationship with their father where they can talk about anything and everything. So if there is a difficulty within the relationship, they know they have us to come to. If it's not me, it's their dad. And I think for me, that makes me feel good as a mother. But it also means that hopefully that particular model will then go through the whole family. That it won't just be with my daughters, it will be with my boys also. And I have numerous discussions with my sons in terms of if they're having some difficulties and whatever else. So we can have that discussion, and hopefully they will then be able to have a relationship where they can be positive, it can be fruitful, and it can be something where they will be able to share what they have experienced, and in a very loving way without violence. So, I can only speak for myself in that respect, but it's something I've seen, and I've seen it happen, and I've seen the respect not only have they seen the respect towards me, but they also have been able to give that respect to others within the household and extend it out. So I just think that in some respects, men do play a very key role, and it's a shame we haven't got one on the panel. But I do know that we've got someone that's saying a lot of things in terms of the essay, which is good. But it is something where it is about we all need to do it together. We all need to do it together. It shouldn't just be the responsibility of the woman. It also should be the responsibility of the man. And, that's something that I still believe in. You cannot do it on your own.
Thank you so very much. And we are very grateful. I believe that viewers and listeners, that we have really learned something today. I have learned a lot. So we are eternally thankful to our wonderful guests. You're so experienced, and it's so enriching, and the things that you've shared with us. So we are absolutely grateful. So I want to say a special thanks to Dr. Obokri for making the time. Also, what can I say, Kim? Thank you very much. Your book.
My book. There you go.
Hold the book up again. Stop hurting me. Time to get out. Yes. And what can I say? And thank you very much for coming. Please, we'll have you again. I think this conversation cannot be a one-time conversation. It has to keep going on. Definitely would be inviting you back. We were so grateful. So thank you very much for coming through, and God bless. So goodbye to our
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye everyone. Take care.
Take care, ladies.
Bye.
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 And you, sweetheart. Speak to you soon.
Bye. Okay, thank you. Bye. Okay, so we are going to bring our show to an end, but before I do that, let me please acknowledge our wonderful viewers and who've contributed a lot to this. Can you believe that Nana Ekia Yaboa is in hospital, and she's still commenting from hospital, and she's one of our research and outreach members. Oh, Nana, speedy recovery, please. Speedy recovery. The air can yan say, I deal with yan dear just jaikan. Sena young crow for no mobile soon. I beg catching. A idea you was so dear baby was at the Jumawing. I just say, ye memman, I just said to see a may. Umayan chay memman say, and yatian any room run the Mawaya Bema. Or dog now, what your don and the Mawaya Bema. And some of my can no your patch to was necessary seeing in a view. You didn't have meeting I cannot dream. By a dominance, we thank them so very much. We are grateful to Nana, we are grateful to Claire, we're grateful to John, to Trudy, to Laura, to Iris, to Mami Kia, Dorcas, who's also executive, to Ophelia Texan, who's also an executive, to Kwame Pepra, to Iris, to Princess, Mystery. We thank you all very much for your wonderful comments. They are all very much appreciated, and we are so grateful. So we appreciate that. If you are still watching, we want you to make suggestions about topics that you want us to discuss in the future, things that affects us as a community, as the Black, Asian minority groups, the pertinent topics that you want us to discuss. Please make suggestions. Go to our page, the GHASWA outreach page on Facebook. Send us a message and let us know the topics that you want us to discuss in the coming weeks, and we'll do our very best to do that. So thank you very much for listening. We are so grateful. And next week, we are bringing back, because technology failed us when we wanted to treat youth crime. But next week, it is bigger and it's better. You do not want to miss this. Tell your friends, tell your family that next week, 7 p.m. sharp, they should be on the GHASWA Outreach Show, and we are going to learn something. GHASWA, we say, action. GHASWA will respond by saying excellence. And GHASWA, we say service to the community. So we are so grateful for everybody who's tuning in. We're so grateful for all the members from the Ghanaian Social Workers Association, GHASWA, and all the executives who have helped to have this discussion. We will say that let's keep safe, let's stay blessed, and God bless us all.